I guess everybody's here now. You all can hear me and see my screen, right? If all is good, just anyone say yes and we'll get started. Thank you very much. So now we are all set. Okay, continuing from our yesterday's session, we are still on module 3 and we intend to finish it in the first half. So let's continue from where we left yesterday. If you can view this chart, and I'll explain how it is set and what it means, but it's giving us an overview of the opportunities that are out there in the research market, or you could say the opportunities for anyone starting off on their own as an or as a kind of what is out there in the market. So depending on how you are set or how you've put your business together, and depending on your expertise, you can divide your services in 2 parts, basically. You can be a generalist, which means that you know how to do the search, you can save time for your client, you have a lot of soft skills that allows you to do critical thinking, and for getting any kind of assignment as a virtual assistant would also involve research work. So that sort of puts you in a slot of a generalist. And then we've got the subject expertise, as we had discussed before. Now, within the zone of contracts, we are going to split this or separate it into 2 portions. One is indicated by this arrow coming down into this box that has a list of expertise, or typically what is considered as a niche market for certain type of researches, and these are listed here. Then we have got a generalist opportunity. Again, I emphasize that a generalist has to be also capable enough that it can give some sort of assurance to the client that you have the ability to perform certain type of research. And these are, differentiated into 3 blocks as a generalist. One is a social networks, advertised quick hiring, temps, contracts. These are just short sort of quick view, or giving you an idea of the type of services that are split. So social networks could be something that involves different type of research, and we have not itemized it at this point right now, but let's consider social networks as one target market. Then we've got advertised quick hiring, which is where people are looking for virtual assistants. Temp jobs are there, contract, which could mean anything, but let's suppose contract has to do with social networks or anything that is short term. So these are short term contracts, and then employment opportunities. So this is in one slot. And this red arrow pointing downwards is giving you sort of an idea of the type of opportunities that exist in these platforms. So Craigslist, Angie's List for opportunities, groups that you can tap into, Twitter to see if there is someone, a writer or anyone looking for services, outside services, momsathome.com and so on. So these are just some of the platforms that you can look up. I think we have a more elaborate list within the same slot or under the same arrow that sort of gives you more to look at. Then we've got the second box that is separated from the first one. And this is to do with offshore inexpensive bids oriented projects. that is, again, like I said, subjective, depending on the requirements of the client. They may decide to give it to where language is not a barrier. So that could be, something, but it is at a low price points. You're competing against offshore centers. The platforms that is indicated are listed here under the arrow as an example right here. Odesk, Outsourcely, Freelancer, Guru, Upworks, and so on. And then under these two blocks, you see this line. What this is saying is that for these two platforms or these two opportunity blocks, within these areas or within these portals, websites, you would find that there is a kind of work which is labeled or somewhat given a heading or a title, and those are listed here. Okay, like lead generation, data mining, data verification, website content scraping, contact list collections, product pricing, product selection, business intelligence and analytics, e-commerce products, description writing, images collection. A lot of it can be considered a laborious or a labor work, but still it pays. It may not be research in the true sense of how we have used it so far, but at least it is a search of some sort. Resume search and HR, virtual assistant, content writer, so on and so forth. So this is where these two blocks are giving you a sort of a generic or a general idea of the type of opportunities or the type of work. On the extreme left, the third one is information aggregators, answering questions, and research paper collection. It could be others as well. So the last one would require a little bit of an expertise, or where your research skills can be tested in the true sense, where you have to make a selection of the type of information by reading through the content or the text itself. So it is more of a little bit of a higher level of decision making involved in this box. Researchgate.com is a type of website that is hiring researchers that would bring or collect certain information, including research papers and something that collectively would bring a more valuable information. Mostly it's PDF files that are floating around. A lot of it is obviously in public domain. So all that gets collected, and for that you get paid. And ResearchGate has two sort of ways of how it is using its platform. One is to deliver the already researched documents and papers and whatever to the clients, because the clients that they have or their market is a lot to do with the research on demand or something that they need on short-term searches, for which they would ask ResearchGate to provide on-demand results as and when needed. First of all, it's an inexpensive service, so they don't actually charge for the content itself. Like whatever content is aggregated, brought, and archived on their servers is usually from public domain, and it is under public license. So the charges they make to the client is for the services of collecting the information, and which brings the cost far lower than what you would expect to get from a comprehensive research platforms like Forrester, IDC, etc. So ResearchGate pays obviously higher than the other two platforms or the other two boxes that I've mentioned here, which sort of makes it, or it can be categorized as a separate opportunity. Ask Wonder is another. By the way, if you qualify as a CIRS, you get hired by Ask Wonder instantly. So this is an understanding they have with our association. So anyone with those credentials coming from us would have a better chance of getting some work from Ask Wonder. And so there are these sites listed as well. Now, there is another aspect of how you get involved in research work, to the extent where I would say that it's not really research in the true sense of how we collect information, but rather it's an answering service, or it is a set of opinions or some sort of a consumer review that you would be asked to provide. There are a lot of platforms with forums which now have become popular, but earlier when they started, they needed some ghost researchers. We call ghost, the word ghost is used in the internet world as the kind of services which are provided through several accounts that are held by one individual who operates them, and basically creates a persona, personalities, or creates pseudonames where, you know, the account seems to have all the elements that you know, sort of put the profile together of a real person, but it's just one person operating several accounts that they create. So the objective of this type of service is to make those platforms more content, you know, rich by adding their opinions, by putting questions in those forums. Basically, they create that traction or creates that momentum so that those areas are not left empty, or there is supposedly you know, a lot of activity going on. So in order for them to create that activity, they would hire people. Consumer opinions, you know, answering those, or if you are a technical person, maybe you can do some consumer reviews. They pay you for it, and they pay you quite a bit. And there are people who have been working with certain companies with that are known for consumer. Even CNET, for instance, has a lot of people they hire on contract basis. And if you've been working with them, you would find that it's a very long-term arrangement. And gradually, you know, you're given some extra, you know, incentives, and eventually and progressively they increase your price and everything. So that is a sort of a platform that I would think that's this one in this slot would give you a chance to earn better compared to these two platforms. Then we have subject expertise, online market research. If you're good at this, there are some certifications and specialization in this area. When it comes to research work, usually from the way we perceive it and how we've looked at some of the information online, we see that the word market research or market researcher is much popular and often used only because of the demand for it, or people, you know, interested in this area. So market research generally has a sort of a slot in the internet world that gives it a kind of meaning which is separate from research itself. So market and research together is where you find a lot of opportunities. Online surveys and polls, you can do that if you are a research company. New products research, clinical research. Clinical research, of course, is a specialized area. Lot of legalities involved here. Patents, copyrights, and intellectual property, usually done by law firms and handed over to their staff that only specialize in finding the patents. Patents investigation and patents compliance, as well as patents discovery is a very high-paying opportunity, except that you really need to be technically savvy to understand some of the ways in which you can compare, find, and basically correlate. You have to advise your client on patents as an attorney to see if there is something that is infringing, or the copyrights can be considered, or maybe the patents can be accepted or not. So for that reason, you have to do very deep searches, because there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of patents that are there, and they all look somewhat similar. So I mean, for me, it has become really a challenge when I was filing my own patents. I remember just looking at some of the innovations, because patents are usually for innovations, so this is the area where you have to step in very carefully, because there could be many reasons when your patents is not accepted. And that's only because you have not done your due diligence, and you have not been very much analytical in doing that kind of research. But it is not a rocket science. It is an area, if you're interested in, you can always, it's a free database. A lot of information is available that would assist you in acquiring that specialized skill set to find patents. So this is another area. Company trends and business intelligence. Of course, that is more on the futures, or where you have to look at how the industry is moving. You have to look at future trends. You have to look at the evolving technology. You have to look at threats, what other players are out there, the funding, the investments, which companies are getting that. There are specialized sites that actually provide that information. Some of the areas that are hot or you consider to be upcoming, AI, for example, is the new thing. I mean, AI has been around, but artificial intelligence has a lot of layers to it, depending on where it is applied. For instance, there was a trend 3-4 years ago where facial recognition was a big thing. Now it has evolved enough that it has become a standardized technology, and a lot of players are already in the market, so on and so forth. So that kind of research, and that also means that you have to understand the industry pulse. You also have to be coming from the same industry to understand how it has evolved. And at the same time, you certainly would need some professional, technical, or background knowledge to get into this area. Financial markets, stock researchers, financial analysts are the right people to do it. Social media research is anybody's ball game these days. But a lot of SEO companies, or companies that claim to be online marketers, specialists in bringing your website to the attention of Google engine for it to rank it higher. Those are the kind of people that work in this area of social media research. And that social media research alone has so many different segments or different expertise that would interest you or anyone who understand some of the tools that are available, some of the issues that has to do with privacy, some of the privileged information that you have access to on account of your subscribing to it, like LinkedIn and Facebook has interfaces for companies who like to collect business intelligence. But at the same time, again, we cannot point to exactly what is out there, but for anyone to understand the qualitative aspect of collecting data, like preferences, trends, seasonal preferences, popular terms, and prevalent issues, happenings that are being captured, or for whatever happened in Afghanistan, for example, is the latest trend. There's a lot of information flowing through, misinformation, things that you need to verify. That also comes from social media accounts. So a lot of traction if you sort of focus on just this area of research. Online investigations, again, depending where you or your whether or not you're qualified for it. So this is just the general opportunities and an overview of what is out there. But let's just look at some of the opportunities for hiring you, like for permanent employment. While you are doing your own research work as an independent research, you may end up or land into a job somewhere, and these jobs are advertised everywhere. So with the exception of Simply Hired, or what is that other site, there's Simply Hired, there's Indeed.com. Those sites are really just collection engines of your resume. So don't be very selective when you are looking at the opportunities. See when it was published initially. Just look at the business itself that is hiring, just to see if it's a serious offer or not. So all that is always there, and that is slightly different from opportunities as an independent researcher. So if you're looking to get hired, then of course you would find it interesting to see how many people are hiring those researchers. I just Googled like the other day, and surprisingly, I mean, I didn't Google this term for a while, for a long time actually, and it was the simplest query I could do just to get a general idea of what are the opportunities for researchers. And I think the words that I used was research opportunities. Just Googling online research opportunities, I find, see, Upwork is there, online research opportunities, best online research jobs. So if you click in these and look at what is being asked as the requirement, or what could be the job description, you sort of get a sense of what is being required in certain markets, like in academics or universities versus insurance companies. They might be looking for examiners, investigators, and so on. So there is all of these that are out there. That's a lot of information for you to follow, to see and look what is requirements, or what is or how much, what are the popular requirements. Now I'm going to start with the process which involves the documentation of your engagement with the client, and how the documentation flow works. So in this chart, as you could see, we have segmented this into A, B, and C. So 3 different areas, basically indicating the primary documents involved. Initially, when the client wants to hire researchers, they have to request to give a proposal by the researcher. So the researcher would get something called RFP, or request for proposal. And this is a document which I will share with you to give you an idea of what are the different elements of it, or how you would respond to this request. So in the second one, you're going to respond by research proposal. So to see in B, what is the research proposal like? As I mentioned earlier, we have a specimen that I can share with you. Then I have got a service contract, which is coming after the proposal has been finalized, it's accepted by both parties. Then you've got a research contract you have to deal with. And then there is one last document we call Bill of Services, and I'll show you how the Bill of Services are prepared. Because you see, all these documents have a lot of relevance for the client to understand how much of a professional are you, or are you acquainted with and familiar with the documentation that is comprehensive enough, or it is got all the aspects covered, so that it comes across as if your response is coming from someone who knows the business, who also understands what is involved. So these are very important documents, and it could make and break your contract, or basically you would make a first impression to the client by giving a proposal first initially when you are responding to their request for proposal. So document B, in the sense where you are about to acquire, you are bidding for a contract, is most important. And then the contract itself has got a lot of legalities, kind of information, which some of it is considered standard, while the others are to be put in carefully, like costs, timelines, expertise you have in-house or you commit to, and so on. The billing itself is slightly different. It is a document which I'll share with you, billing or invoicing. Okay, so I'll show you how that is made. So let's just continue with looking at the documents first. I'm going to share it with you in the. Let me get out of this first. Now I'm going to open up the book. Now here is a billing document. I hope it is visible enough. You could see these numbers. This is coming from the invoicing format that we have in-house. Now this format can be different, depending, it's just what we use. So that's all we can share with you for now. Okay, now what you have to be looking at is the headings, like this one right here. So under this, you could see that these are different processes or different milestones that you cover or you commit to. And for that reason, they are described here like research, problem assessing and planning. This would be the initial stage. And while you're doing assessment and planning, there is hours involved, there is your resources involved, individuals or expertise are required. So this is the first part. Second is, after you get through the planning and assessment, you get to the second stage, which is research approach. That is probably something to do with your internal way of how you're going to progress with the research part, like what type of research is involved, what type of data you require, what type of approach or methods you're going to apply, and so on. So this is the part where you're actually executing the contract. And so it would have different sets of hours and your resources and everything else that needs to be built. Then we've got research design, then we've got data collection, data analysis, and reporting. So depending, everybody has their own way of describing or putting your cost or your billing based on how you have set or departmentalized or how you're going to progress with the timelines, with completing these under these headings. So in the first one, you would see that we have put, starting from right to left, if you see that we have staff hours. So it says level 4 has staff hours 4, level 3 is 3, level 4 24. So all of these together is 35 hours. And these 35 hours are exclusively allocated or assessed or actually built with what was logged in as the service hours you've spent under research, problem assessing and planning. So 35 hours here. Now level 1, 2, 3, 4 is described in your contract, like what is these level of staff or the people who are involved are given a certain expertise level, or their cost or billing hourly rates would be different only because of their qualification or their expertise, or even a general staff that is covering secretarial work that needs to be assessed as well. So that part is all covered under levels. So level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and each level would be built for the rate that you have decided or agreed with the client. So if level 1 staff is involved, the rate is, let's say, $120 an hour. So here are the rates, like 120 an hour. Level 2 staff is $80 an hour. 3 is 65 and 4 is 45. Okay. So with if you want to look at this, you would be able to make sense based on the computation. If you see what is considered as number of hours for level 1 staff, it's 126 multiplied by 120, and the figure is $15,120. Similarly, $254 for level 2 staff at $80 an hour is $20,320. And together, if you add it all horizontally, it is giving you a total figure of $39,350. So this is what you are billing only for the labor that is spent in this area, okay, which is described. And against all these, you could see that it's listed in a horizontally in a row, so that you would really relate it to the type of service or type of work you've done. And then there is another set where you are going to describe it, or you put it under the heading material and direct overheads. Now, material and direct overheads are also part of the contract, and you describe or give a general view of what could be included in there, or what could be considered materials and overheads. In this case, we have used online subscriptions as part of the overhead. These are, see, there are direct overhead. First of all, you must have heard of the term overheads. Overheads is everything that sort of is a cost points that can be distributed or allocated to kind of work, which could be a mix, but it also has a certain supporting costs for you to deliver that work, and that supporting cost is what we call overheads. And that overheads can be direct or indirect. Direct overheads are the ones that are, you know, you can pinpoint as if it is a solid expense directly related to a job that you're doing. Indirect overheads are the allocated overheads that could be proportionally distributed. When you have a lot of work from different clients, then the entire cost cannot be just put on the one individual task or one individual client. So you distribute it according to the percentage or according to the you know, certain formula or ratio. So when that happens, you're talking about indirect overheads. But in this case, we are mentioning direct overheads and material cost. What is it that we have used is shown here. Paid data, membership, memberships 3%. Probably there, I don't know what this is, but anyway, let's just consider it as part of the cost. Memberships, okay. Printing, stationery, out of pocket is another kind of expense, which is exactly considered a direct overhead based on some of the elements that are not fixed and varies depending on, you know, the actual cost of doing that service or delivering that research, like travel, meals, and lodging, and etc. So these are listed here. And at the very end, we've got what do we have? Total amount before adjustment. So no, without discounts, no discounts, depending if there's a discount, there's a minus sign. Before tax amount, and then sales tax applied adds up to 46,721. So this is a specimen, and Kelly was asking me, so how is the cost? Does this answer your question on billing, Kelly?
Sorry, yes, on the billing, but when you're doing your proposal to them, do you put in the estimated hours that it'll take?
Of course. What else are you supposed to put in the proposal, I wonder?
I was just making sure.
So, okay, so let's just look at the other documents. Now, this is a request for proposal, and this is coming from a client, ABC Incorporated, and see how they write the request. They give a company background first, so there is a bit of a summary about the client and their business, giving you an idea of what they do. And it has things like company background, goals and scope of services, research project objectives. Goals and objectives are very important because this gives you an idea of where they're coming from and how they are trying to, or in what sense they would be using that research work, like giving you a general idea, not being very specific. What is specific is really the scope of work. As you can see right here, this should have been bolded, but pointing it out right now so that you don't miss it. I don't know why this is not bolded. Anyway, it should be emphasized. So this is scope of work, and this area is most important for you to prepare the proposal for your client. Obviously, it is going to talk about collecting, like, first of all, you have to understand that when the proposal comes, in my experience, generally the information is not sufficient. It's a kind of a teaser. It's more of a document that needs more interaction. Being a potential client, you want to get back to the client and ask a more detailed version of it. This is typically how it is set. Unlike government contracts, which are more elaborate and basically very detailed, but when you're dealing with private clients and private companies, they don't expose as much, but just give you a general idea, because there is a disclosure issue. So they give you an overview in the first instance. When you look at the scope, you would get an idea, but there would be more behind it. So you want to get back to the client and not be shy about asking questions. Be very expressive, be very detailed in what you require. Anyway, but what is generally available, or what is shown here as an example, is listed like perform online research work and collect business intelligence for products. So it is heading towards a product research. Maybe they're about to launch a product, or they want to test the market, or maybe it's a already launched product and it's not selling well. So feature sets, comparative intelligence can be the issue. So for now, just from the surface, I can tell that it is a product research. Then we've got best price determination. That could be another analysis, which is price analysis. Evaluate product competition and its business market outlook. So it is heading towards industry. It is heading towards competitors. Evaluation to see, what is the popularity, or what is their popular product. Then the client will rely on data and data analysis, as in quantitative research as well as qualitative. So they're asking to not only provide statistics or provide actual physical numeric data for, let's say how much of a product is sold in the market, or anything that is concrete and has numbers to indicate. And then you've got other set of data which is qualitative, like what is the popular thing, what are the trends, how do you foresee their the competitor's product performing in the market compared to what is about to be launched. So there could be 10 different questions, but at least they're describing, giving you a general idea that research requires qualitative as well as quantitative data. I'm going to explain qualitative and quantitative more when we are going to go back to module 2 to do data analytics and some of the data collection methods like surveys and so on. Then we've got the research will also determine product utilization by a particular consumer group, and answer the questions such as what value the product brings to the consumer. So all these type of information would require surveys, virtual groups, focus groups, right? And kind of giving you a general idea of what is involved. It seems that it is market research, pre-launch or post-launch, we don't know, of a product, and is a lot of work involved. The selective firm will be responsible for the development and implementation of a comprehensive and cost-effective market research plan. So market research plan is, of course, something that you would help the client to create, because generally it is the responsibility of the client to put the market research plan together. But perhaps they need some hand holding, and based on what you collect for them, with what is itemized earlier, you should be able to shape or participate in putting the market research plan together. And now they're being a little bit more specific, and they're opening up by saying that task will include but may not be limited to the following. That means that these are the set of reports or analysis that they expect you to do. Which makes it even more clearer, like perform SWOT analysis, product analysis, product. So these are all different types of analysis that are listed. These are itemized, okay? But look at how they have worded it. They're saying may not be limited to it. So there could be more, and you want to know what is more. Obviously, it doesn't sound like it's heading towards a fixed price contract or something that you can bid for without giving it enough flexibility so that you can accommodate any variance or any extension of work, anything that cannot be or is not included, but you foresee as you progress with the research, like it may have. So you may want to deal with the client as far as pricing is concerned in two ways. One is that scope, which has to be really well written, and it has to be detailed enough that when you put it in your proposal, you on your side is able to tell if this is the fixed sort of work for which you can assess the price with confidence. And there could be other elements which would require different costing. That could be cost plus 20%, cost plus contract, a mix of fixed plus cost plus, or those variances can be accommodated in increased pricing if these things are not, you're not able to deliver within that specified time. So all that has to be built into a contract. The contract is the most important document at the end. But in the beginning, while you're doing your proposals and all that, you have to have the best or the utmost understanding that you can get from the client in order to respond. And once they look at your response and they agree to move forward with the contract, then the contract negotiation could be another hurdle, or it could be another process that requires a careful vetting of all the clauses in those contracts. Anyway, so this is the proposal that they want, and what you are going to deliver in return in response to this request is listed or is basically given as a specimen, like research proposal in market research. So when I'm going to reply to it, I'm going to give again the background of my business, identify research problem that the client is defining or giving in the scope, so that the understanding is mutually agreeable enough, or they as a client would get a sense that you understood the problem in the sense in which it is laid out, or there is a meeting of mind there. Then you've got research objectives, which you basically are restating exactly or similar to the wording that's mentioned in the proposal. So there is no ambiguity, or there is no sort of misunderstanding or miscommunication. So you want to reiterate, you want to put it back there And then for some of the ways in which they describe the scope or the type of reports may not be exactly how you would word it as a researcher, because you don't expect those, the client or the potential client to have enough understanding to name the reports or to name the process as you would otherwise put as a professional researcher. So you are going to use the wordings which are not confusing and which is understood industry wise as a researcher. So that's what it means when we say research objective. And then, research scope, again, it's a just, itemized, but for better understanding, we need to go down and look in one of these in the table of content, you could see cost of research. So obviously, if you're going to send a proposal back to the client, you are going to mention the price for it or how much you intend to charge, so the client would know that what you're proposing would cost them so much, or this is the amount of research, this is the amount involved in research. The timelines have to be mentioned, research team, who will be included in this. If you have people who, even though they are not working with you on full-time basis, at least you would be able to mention their name, their qualifications, because you intend to hire them or get them in as a contractor. And you probably have some sort of understanding with the other specialized staff or consultants that are readily available for you, or they would work for you. So you're going to mention it in the research team. There is a disclaimer, a non-disclosure, and anonymity. So this is non-disclosure and anonymity is a very important agreement that you would send to the client. In a way, you are basically, instead of client sending it to you as a non-disclosure for the important, or you could say that some of the privileged information they don't intend to share with you in the initial stages. So that document may not be included in the request for proposal, but you are able, if you are able to send it to them and give them an assurance that if that non-disclosure is signed, they would openly discuss the project in more detail. You would rather just include it in your request response to request for proposal. So when we go down, we'll see all that is mentioned in the index. Here is the background, research problem. So hypothesis, or you're just visualizing, you're giving them an idea of how you understand it. The client is interested in investing its resources for launching new products. So there we go. So it's a new product for men that contributes to concealing and covering men's baldness by applying organic hair fiber solution via hairspray bottle container. So nice and sweet, in few words. You don't, when you're sending your your response against a request, don't write very long paras. Don't make it confusing for the client. Make it precise and try to make it appear as if it is exact response to what is given in the proposal or request for proposal. So just make sure that it's concise enough and it's still not missing out on what is being requested. Research objective, this is important, where you are redefining it basically under the best understanding from the first document you got. The client is an online retailer of innovative, blah, 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 whatever product X. In this regard, the client wants to outsource comprehensive online market research that covers both qualitative and quantitative research concerning new product viability, optimize pricing, and validate target consumer market. So this basically explains your understanding of the scope. Then validate target market, everything, you can read through it. I don't have to go through each and every point, but the important ones I'm pointing to right now, like research scope. So research scope, collect business intelligence. So this was the scope that they had mentioned, and you have actually, so that there is no confusion, You have mentioned all those points under this, like 1.1 through 1.5 is what was exactly asked in the scope, and you have redefined, you have defined it or basically put it there exactly the way it was set in the scope. So to avoid any confusion, like you won't want the client to say that, oh, you got the request that wasn't sanctioned, or it was the incorrect one. Just to avoid that confusion. So you have mentioned it again. And then you are going to start with where you are preparing your proposal. You start with how you intend to approach it, like what research methods you're going to apply, quantitative methods for data collection, like what would be your primary data source. Would you be doing surveys? So you're going to say surveys, conduct cross-sectional and longitudinal research surveys. So basically you're educating your client at the same time, telling them that based on how the industry perceives or interprets what you have asked, you are going to place it and word it accordingly. And the words you have used is cross-sectional and longitudinal research surveys. Transaction logs collects records of logs, all this is competition, analysis of online sales belonging to business competitors for similar products. So you are basically saying that this is the primary source that you're going to work with, and the assessment, including the cost, the timelines, and the deliverables have to be understood mutually in a more detailed way by creating milestones of when, how, and when would the client expect that this work can be accomplished. So you can actually give some sort of a timeline to the client, and a lot of times the client don't understand the level of work or the time that it would take and expect very quick results. So you want to give them a more realistic picture, and this is how you're going to put your case in front to let them know that it is justified, or whatever timeline that you are describing is more realistic. So secondary data sources analysis, what type of analysis you would do the research team. But let's come down, look at this chart to see how you are going to put this sort of a plan of doing the research work for the client. It is giving some milestones that are described here in different phases of your research plan. And the first phase, as you could see, it's giving a brief, like itemized here, that says finalize research contract, review scope and with the client, develop research plan, obtain approval by the clients. In a way, this is a process that you would like to get familiar with, or if you want to read more on it, there is a separate chapter that talks only about research planning. And you will find more on this, but basically these are itemized and given as headings. And on the right, there is a little bit more explanation or some, it is actually a remarks column or a column which identifies certain processes. Since this is coming from a real research that we did, so it has everything that is focused on that particular job that we're using for our example. So it is more customized for that, and it says draft research plan, finalize and research contract signed, prepayment, etc., bills and monies obtained to commence research. This would take 14 days. Phase 2 is data collection, procurement, finalize data sampling. This data sampling is most important for the client to know, so that any data that you collect would have would have a value assessed for the client, or something that you would want the client to agree for the sample size, because sampling, without sampling, you cannot take the entire population into account. So you have to really first identify the population. The general population means that it is the overall or the, it could be a universal population, okay, except that you want to identify the size of the sample. So that, and what would be the size of the sample is a numeric figure. However, the quality of the sample have to be described as well. The situation or the sample objects or the human subjects that you want to identify as part of the sampling would have certain attributes or certain distinct characteristics, which also needs to be identified. So the mix of that sample would make sense, and it is going to serve the purpose for doing your research work on that. So collection of data sampling is important. Custom surveys, that means questions that you're going to prepare, you have to discuss with the client. The clients have to agree with those questionnaires. And then validation, primary, secondary, so it's all listed here. I wouldn't have to go through each one of them, but I would expect that you would have an understanding of how these different types of information sets relate to the phase which we call data collection and procurement phase. And alongside this, you would see that there is a timeline or estimated number of days that we describes that how long it's going to take to get the phase 2 finished up. And then we've got phase 3, phase 4, drafting a report, research, analytics. The analytics sides, you could see that we have used a certain type of analysis. So not everything is going to fit into this. Basically, just the phase which needs to be translated into the number of days it's going to take to complete this phase of research and analysis. This is what is important. Coming down, we see cost of research. Now, this is basically not really the cost to us. It is not exactly the cost of doing the job from the researcher's perspective, it is the pricing. So I would rather use the word pricing of research, but to the client, it is their cost of research. Anyway, it doesn't matter as long as you understand. Consulting charges, level 1, level 2, let's say these all figures are coming from, remember the example I showed you with the invoicing of the billing document that is showing how we have calculated all these figures. So it isn't difficult to understand. As labor cost, direct overheads is 20%. I guess this could be based on the assumption or approximation, because this is not actual billings. You have to use speculative figures or give it some sort of a number to identify with. So in this case, we have used a percentage, overheads 20% approximately. It could be less or it could be more. There is a variable cost which could vary, I guess, depending on the volume of work. Here is where you would give yourself a little bit of room and put it in as a clause in your research contract that this could vary. So anything that is under the heading of variable cost would sort of not be definite. It would vary. It could be higher or lower. Research surveys, subscription, all of this is variable cost. Out of pocket expenses, again, you have to speculate. You cannot be sure. You have to provision for it. Not that these are exact. So your estimate is that the entire project would be approximately costing $200,000. And this is based on, clearly all these figures. And then there is a disclaimer It says the document is a draft only proposal and provided to you as an offer in response to RFP. The information contained here is subject to change and revision by both the association and the client. Because when you're giving your first proposal, you are sort of expecting that there could be some back and forth exchange of documents and more information would be exchanged later on to come up with a final proposal and eventually the agreement. Non-disclosure says that the association agrees to maintain records with personal identifiers, project staff and managers, but will not release information to unauthorized, so that you're prompting the client to disclose something or to move forward under this disclaimer and this non-disclosure agreement, sort of without having to put an elaborate agreement at this point for non-disclosure. So it is just a clause that you put in to give reassurance to your client that they can start to exchange information with you. At the end, last document that we describe here is a market research agreement. This is a very long document. It probably has, so this, the good thing is that this is a true agreement. It is the kind of agreement that we use. So it has got a lot of clauses covered. Anything that we felt would protect us and give the client, it is what we call mutual agreement. It is not a one-sided agreement. You have to look at both sides of how the client would actually find these clauses agreeable and would not consider it to be a one-sided agreement that only gives privileges and gives sort of or it's biased in any way. So it has to be balanced, and to the best of our knowledge, this is a mutually agreeable kind of a draft of an agreement. Market research services, compensation and reimbursement. And here you see it says in consideration this, these are the clauses that you have to insert. These are not standard clauses. I'll tell you, like market research services is a standard. You have to tell what type of services you are involved in and how you want to deliver those services to your client. Compensation and reimbursement is where you're going to make the changes, and you have to draft it carefully. There would be things in there like the client shall agree to pay 30% of the estimated project cost in advance before the commencement. It will be called project mobilization advance. Out-of-pocket costs termed as incidental research expenses and research data procurement cost, and any other expenses that association incurs in connection with performing the services. So it is a little bit more giving room to the figures that you have stated earlier for it to change as the research progresses. Then you've got independent contractor status. That means you are not their employee. You are an independent contractor. So the legalities of how the tax should be deducted, how your staff will be treated, how you, in what capacity you will be involved with the client, to what extent you would be given privileges to use their data or use their premises or anything that sort of requires for you to have a clear-cut understanding that in whatever case that implies otherwise that you can be termed or your staff can be termed as an employee has to be clarified. It should not be mixed with it. It could otherwise give a lot of create a lot of issues. One of these clauses I would put is not to hire or to prevent the client from hiring someone who is working for you as a permanent employee or as a full-time helping hand without your consent, so that you have the control over making sure that your staff remains your employee. It doesn't It's not hired by anybody else. Indemnification is a standard clause. Intellectual property is a standard clause. Confidential information is a standard clause where the confidentiality is to remain intact between parties. It is giving a sort of in the contract a clause that covers NDA or non-disclosure agreement that favors both parties actually. So this is also part of it. Termination is important, how the contract will be terminated. It's usually a standard clause. Terms of agreement, disclaimer is standard. Other agreements, anything that you want to add to it, you can put in this. And then of course, both parties sign this agreement. And so basically, this is how you cover all the documents and areas that result in engaging with the client. Let me see if we have time. Let's start with, so any questions so far on what we discussed already on the contractual documents? I'm sure you would have the opportunity to ask questions later if you look at some of these specimens. Maybe you have something to ask. You can do it later, put it in the email or just put it in the chat. But for now, I think we've covered everything that has to do with research in business and business of research. So any questions, Daniel, so far? How is it going for you?
That's pretty good, pretty interesting. It's a lot of things, a lot of information, of course, as it's an overall coverage, but it's all right. It's all right.
Kelly, any questions?
No, I'm doing pretty good, thanks.
Eliza? Warren, Mark?
Sorry, no, I'm doing well. I feel like this is going pretty well.
I couldn't hear you well, Eliza. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
No, I'm just saying that I think things are going well here.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, well, contract is, and the request for proposal is very in depth. Obviously, something to go through. Obviously, needing an attorney, to review any of this type of information. My question was going back to the different sections of job opportunities. Where would doing research of archives or public records, things for documentary filmmakers and genealogists, where does that fall into? Which category here?
I think that is probably in the expertise or expert knowledge. It could be a niche area that obviously you'll have to look up and see if, see, you're asking me about something which I'm not familiar with, like as far as genealogy and, movies and documentaries and things like that. That probably is something that you'll have to discover for yourself, unless I actually dig in deep and do my own research and then give you an answer to this, because it's obviously a niche market. So if you have to get into this area, then I would start with like just from the top of my head, I could just think of an approach to this. Perhaps I would look at, can you repeat what was the kind of clientele you're looking for? Again, what
Sure.
clientele was it?
It's pretty much of a mix of a lot of different things, but basically involving the research for documentary films or people who are interested in, family genealogy or military records, or, which gets to where my question was with, researching information on the web and going to the Library of Congress and things like that. Because my thinking, my train of thought is leaning towards doing research for, people who are looking for history information, to fact check for documentaries or for articles, things like that.
So these are all different directions, different areas that you want to look up for, getting access to information using online or using your internet to get to those sites that has all these records. For government agencies, I wouldn't know, because obviously you are saying military, you're using the word military records. I don't know where to go to find military records, honestly. As far as documentaries, yes, for sure. I mean, you could definitely, depending on the subject, you would use bit of information that is in the library archives. And then whatever you sort of search for as pieces of information that are mentioned in articles, blogs, somewhere in research papers that are that has anything to do with the subject matter, anything that has to do with social sciences. If it is just pure history, then you would pick up clues, and from the articles has links that would say that or if you click on, you could probably find some more information and explore. It will only give you direction. It won't like have the entire matter available to you, because if it is a very in-depth and a very detailed account of something that involves research into archives, then you have to look into the databases. So first, you have to really create that cloud of information that you can actually search for as the destination of where to get that information, and then collectively organize that perhaps as links, or the type of portals that you think that would require subscription to get into. Maybe that your links to the libraries different. There is geographical boundaries which needs to be crossed at this point to see certain archives, certain information sets are outside of North America. So how to get to those. There could be a documentary that has to do with Siberia, for which you would find better stuff in Eastern Europe versus in North America, or could be more details that require you going looking for the archives of information on Ottoman Empire. So it just depends on how you collect the first. So you collect all that to understand where to get that information. So you have a map that tells you that these are the destinations where you can find certain information. Once you're equipped with it, then obviously you have to look at where the documentaries are being made, or they are not the ones that are made already, but the ones that are in the making. So to find what's going on in the industry, you have to be coming from the industry to actually pick up that topic or pick up that niche area. If you are someone who is a writer and suddenly want to do a search for, let's say, documentaries or something that has to be, that has to do with the filming and all that, then you have to learn a little bit about the industry to know where to find those resources. But to just put yourself out there as someone who is into genealogy, into military database, into documentaries, like, you can only, I mean, that's just my opinion. So I don't know how to answer that question precisely. But what we have taught you in CIRS, even with the topic we just finished, is for you to learn a few things about, how to do the research part, the opportunities that are generally available, niche areas which we can think of, but we can definitely not we are not the right people to tell you exactly where to find or to find opportunities for documentaries, research, or but writers research we can tell because we had few people who were engaged in this area of working with the writers, professional journalists, to do research for them, do background checks. That is typically the type of research I'm familiar with. So if you know some writers, or if you know where certain platforms, like there is a platform for journalists, there is an association of journalists, there is the different types of journalists, that one of them is what they call an association of citizen journalists. The associations vary according to the region, so you may want to connect with them to see if they have put out there, some sort of request for hiring people. It requires for you to spend time to get to know all those opportunities and resources. We won't be able to give you that sort of exact information or that direction to know where to go and find that that sort of a contract. So this is where we won't be we cannot, even if we want to, we won't be, unless we get into that, as I said, that same due diligence that you would need to do to find that opportunity. We'd have to go through the same process also. It won't be any different. Okay. Now, I just want to see if I can start with the module 2, the last part, where we were okay, some internet research challenges. Then I think we did the challenges part, eh? And the primary, did we do primary or secondary information sources? If you can just refresh my memory, I'm sorry, I'm probably not.
We haven't entered that area. Not even the challenges and
Okay.
the primary
How
and
about
secondary.
okay, so all right, so it means that we'll start from the slides that I just pulled, which is exactly where we have all these topics. So let's look at this one we call internet challenges, information sourcing, data types, and surveys. Okay, so this is what we will be discussing. So let's just start with something very basic. Probably you already have an idea. The 5 methods of internet search, the type of search that we've been doing with the search queries that we build, that's something that we'll have to set aside for now. And let's look at in the general sense of what is available to us to do the research. There is main search engines, which what we are familiar with, like Yahoo, Google, Bing, Yandex, Baidu, etc., etc. Those are main search engines, so no big deal. Second one is specialized search engines. How much of information you have on specialized search engines? See, the term search engines is used in a very loose sort of way. I don't know how we can get rid of this, except that it's become so popular to identify with certain portals which happen to have an internal search utility that sorts of points to a search engine or somehow insinuates that it is a search engine itself when it's not. However, just because they are being called specialized search engines, we will just keep beating on the same term and yet be able to identify it with the kind of information we require, specific information for which these searches are meant to work for. And a good example to explain it better, I'm going to give you or introduce you to what we have already provided in your inbox, in your, maybe I have it here. Let me just pull it out. These are the reference guides, the ones that says specialized search. In fact, you know what? I have it online, so let me see. Specialized search engine means any kind of utility programs, portals, search engines or not, but they are known for finding a certain type of information, and they're programmed that way. So they're hard coded to give you certain information pieces for which you don't necessarily have to create those search queries. So let me log in first, otherwise it won't let me do it. I'm just going to log in as. So when you go to the knowledge network and you scroll down, look at where is the search engines list. If I click on this. So for instance, video search engines. Why is it jumping? We have video search engines. So this is one sort of search engines that we can look for different types of formats, files that has to do with video clips. It would bring such results from videos from Vimeo and other platforms. Otherwise, just doing video search through Google will only bring the ones that are in YouTube. So these are video search engines, and you can click on any one of these to find video files. Then we have got all these different ones, like academic search engines would be like academic, science, arts, books. Blog search engines are specialized. Business directories and search engines, document search engines, forum search engines, FTP, general. So if government search engines, legal search engines, international laws, let's just do law because we have somebody from the law firm. So let's suppose it is Australian legal information. I can click on this and go directly. Like legal search in Canada, for instance, if I do Can LII, I can readily find case laws. You know, why is it asking me? F4MKN. So let's suppose it's a trademark issue, and I just put the word trademark. I would trademark. I've got all the case laws that are listed here. This is 4,649 cases. I can click on any one of these. What the heck is going on? Anyway, so you can do your search here, and you can use in these searches like quotation marks, the and operator, and all these. So these are identified here. Why is it doing that? So these are the laws or the different segments of the case, which is listed here. So you can find it easily. You don't have to go and search through the through the conventional way of how we construct the search queries. So this is just giving you a general idea of specialized search engines. Then we've got meta search engines. Meta search engines or meta crawlers have been around for a long time. What these are not really the search engines themselves, like the true search engines, because they don't index pages. They don't actually have the ability to run algorithms of special kind that search engine does, except that meta search engine means that there could be like 5 different main search engines from which the search results are collected and then placed on the meta crawlers result pages or their SERPs. So what they do is they collect it from all different places, all major search engines, and then put it on their results. What they sell is advertisement. So basically, the utilization of meta search engine is no longer required. In fact, these are not true search engines, so you cannot really pinpoint the results. Like every second time that you do the same search, you'll get different results. So this is, what they call meta search engines. I think example of this, if I'm not wrong, there is one that is called Metacrawler, for example, or Metacrawler, like dogpile.com is a Metacrawler. This is a Metacrawler. If I write the search results, it's coming from different, it could be coming from Bing, it could be coming from anywhere. There is no fixed location. Or zipper.com, it wouldn't show where it's bringing those results from. Okay, so this is how it shows up results, and you've got 5 pages of it. I don't want to get into the detail, but this is just to give you an idea what meta crawlers are like. So you understand that this is something that you can discover, and maybe some results that you find useful, you can also run while you're doing main searches. With main search engines, you can also use meta crawlers. Then we've got information portals. Examples of these are given in the book. Remember, information portal we had like archives.com or Wayback Machine, where the cache pages were, which we were querying as a, while discovering like what happens to those web pages that are lost or been taken off. How do you find them archived somewhere where you can get a copy of it? So we went to archives.org, that website. So those are information portals. A subscription to databases, LexisNexis is information portals. And so there could be so many. Subscription databases of deep web. LexisNexis, by the way, belongs to this category, not number 4, I'm sorry, number 5. So here you have to pay some money to get that premium database, which is compiled exclusively for a price that you would need to pay for. Deep web. Zoom, yeah. What is a deep web? Does anyone know what the deep web is? Any one of you, or at least you must have heard the term deep web, or the most popular statement that says that you are only able to see 10% of the web, while the deep web is 90% of it, which you don't discover or you don't get to see. I'm sure some of you must have heard. Anyone? Doesn't look like any. Yeah.
Is all the not indexed information.
Yes, true. So any pages that are not indexable or are not in the public domain, anything that sort of has and explicitly programmed not to be indexed by the search engine ends up in a deep web. Deep web means that it's a kind of index page which the search engine wouldn't know of. Unless you have the address for it with the domain name or the link for it, you won't be able to get there. That's what it means. So, but usually see now these days, the deep web doesn't exist in its true form. Why? Because it needs to be advertised as well for people to discover at least a portion of that, which tells the users that there exists certain pages in this website for which you have to pay for or you have to subscribe. So to the extent where people used to say that it is not discoverable, that statement may not be correct. So the portion where the part of those pages that are visibly made available for the search engine to present to the user to understand what the rest of the information that are non-indexable hold as a data and a value that's given to it or requires registration, membership, whatever, that piece would remain invisible, and a portion of it where, as I mentioned, would be there for advertising purposes. The only part of deep web, which we call darknet or the dark web, that part is not advertised, and that remains anonymous for various reasons. And structurally, they're designed in such a way that even though it exists within the definition of deep web, but it is distinguishable for few reasons. One is that nothing of it is made visible or advertised or is appearing even as a single page on the deep web, on the deep web site, which is we call, like, let's say, let's not, how do I put it, like anything other than darknet, which has pages that advertise anything about it, is non-existent as far as any sites of darknet is concerned. So when you have to discover the darknet, you have to know the links or the bookmarks or anything that is listed somewhere that you can get hold of or find. There are subscription sites that gives you access to the list of the links that belong to the darknet web servers and to the sites. So that area of it is not going to be part of our lecture, and we are going to separate that from the deep web for now. So let's look at the design of deep web. Theoretically, I'm saying theoretically for a reason. The deep web comes under this red line that you see right here, and this is an iceberg. At the top, or starting from the tip of it and until where it ends right before the visible red line, is considered the visible web. The visible web is again separated into two portions. One we call common web or layer 0 web, which means it is totally public information, intentionally created for public use. All the pages in there are considered in public domain. Examples are news articles, Amazon. You can read all this that exists. You have this chart in your book so that you can, go back to it and maybe learn more. But layer 0 is totally public. Then we have got what we call surface web or layer 1 web. This area contains social media accounts where you have the option to allow certain information to get indexed as in public domain, and another part which you can hide as private or keep it private. So social media, certain subscription sites which are partially subscription, partially available, like shared blogs that could be within a website, which allows you to share it between the members or non-members, like the blogs that we have in AOFIRS are to be shared between the members only, and so on. So anyway, that is like partially public, partially private. Under this red line, you find certain areas of the type of sites which may have an element of illegality, or you could say that it is intentionally kept hidden because it would require for the give private privileges based on certain conditions. like Reddit, 4chan has now improved considerably, but before it used to give privileges of a closed group that wouldn't allow for any sort of information to be vetted or for information to be exchanged freely between members of that group. Was a confined space, and which now has become more vetted and more of a moderator driven kind of situation. So Reddit and 4chan, certain FTP sites for ready download of certain softwares which may be legally or illegally obtained, paid torrents, ripped movies, and things like that. This is also called a Berger's web, which means that it is deceptive, where apparently it seems that it is open, but in reality, where all the right information or the real information exists is kind of hidden to a certain extent. So there is this Berger's web there. Then we've got rest of the deep web, which we are familiar with, and to say that these records or these type of information is totally unindexable is incorrect. And as I mentioned to you, part of it is revealed and part of it requires your registration or membership. That is what is kept or is considered as part of the deep web. So subscriptions, memberships, medical records, for example, if it is a insurance company that does life insurance, they would have access to medical records. So it could be privileged in certain cases where secured records or privileged records are presented and conditional upon certain sort of access given and the limit to which those accesses are given. That is could be the medical record access, research papers, academic papers, anything that requires for you to subscribe or to pay for is in the deep web. Private email accounts, Gmail, Yahoo, it's part of the deep web. Virtual private networks, which is VPNs, that has the kind of connectivity which prevents the information flow to be leaked or to be discovered by public. That part we call VPNs. VPNs can have intranets, or intranets is a little bit different from internets. Well, why worry about it? Let's just call it VPNs, okay? So personal banking that you do is VPNs. Employee access to company's database is VPNs. Anonymous access browsers is, I guess, a more interesting portion where you're given the understanding that by browsing through certain type of browsers, you would not be, you wouldn't be revealing your identity, or your browsing data is not collected, which is a true statement. But at the same time, the kind of browsers that we are familiar with in this respect is browsers like DuckDuckGo, for example. It does keep your identity private in the sense that it would still be able to track who the user is from the perspective of how the law enforcement agencies would be able to trace or to see what type of searches you're doing, in case if it needs to focus on finding about you, they would be able to do that. It's not that it's not discoverable. The information is there, except that it lies with the company itself that has this browser, or the ISP would be able to get to where you're browsing from. So it is not anonymous from that point of view where you can just disappear. But it is the kind of browsing that you do, the history of your browsing, that sort of data is not considered or collected, like in the sense of how Google does it, or other mainstream search engines use that information. The DuckDuckGo wouldn't be able to collect that and use it. So to say that you are anonymous, I would say that to the extent where your searches may be or your search result wouldn't be impacted by the way the search engine like DuckDuckGo would implement an implied conditions or deliver something that is influenced by your search history. So only to that extent. So therefore, browsers like DuckDuckGo, however, they've mentioned a browser, it's called Tor, T-O-R. Now, Tor browser is a cross between being totally anonymous and being able to use it for the searches that you do in the darknet area. So depending on how you configure your Tor, you should be able to do both sort of searches where you don't want to make it totally anonymous enough that it would, well, basically to make it work similar to DuckDuckGo, or to make it work exceptionally in a privileged mode or exceptionally anonymous mode by changing the or tweaking the adjustments for it. So we've used Tor and we find that it works really well and mostly used for searching in the dark web. So how the Tor works is that the identity of the server is not known. The person's website that you are browsing, that owner of that website wouldn't know who the user is. At the same time, the user won't be able to identify whose website it is exactly, because the domain names are different. They are not issued by the regular authority or the governing body that we call registrar of domain names. So it works in the parallel fashion, except that these domain names are not the ones that are issued in a legal way. So they are created internally. And the servers that run this type of websites, they don't reveal their location, or they are not named. They are not named with reference to the public IPs that are considered standards. They're like private IPs all over. So those private IPs can be any IP or number that you want to put, except that the only thing is it has to be 4 octets, like it has to be like 4 sets of numbers, except that the mix of those numbers are not controlled. So the way they give the IPs, or the IPs that are given to those servers, are dynamically generated, or whatever is available that is not following the information, and those IPs are temporary, that disappear every time the server is turned on or it is rebooted, or there could be other mechanisms that keep changing the IPs, and those are dynamic IPs and private IPs that are configured automatically by the machine. So not getting too deep into it, it seems that I've explained a little bit more than I'm supposed to, but to give you a general sense of how the deep web works versus what part is visible or considered visible web, both in terms of private and privileged information versus public information, is set with the examples, giving these different areas that you can look at and discover. Basically, with what is written here, it gives you an indication of what type of information lies in the deep web. So most of it, like they say, like I've been reading, and even today you find the same articles. It's beating the same drum. They're saying 90% is invisible. We only get to see. I don't know where those percentages come from, but most of the deep web we are able to access. At least we know the direction of where to go to access that. So it is discoverable. And darknet, unless you are equipped to get into the darknet and you are actually making an effort to find something in the dark web, you would be able to get there as well. So not something that creates a boundaries that are impenetrable. You can always get into the deep web if you'd like. So with this, we're going to finish up with the deep web part. And then we've got something we call browser tools and the internet bubble. Browser tools, I'll just be few minutes. Let me finish this, please. Adjusting the browser. So this diagram is showing you two sort of searches that are done, let's say by a person named Alex. Region 1 could be, say, North America. Another gentleman named Corey is searching, let's say from Middle East somewhere. And both of these are using Google and using exactly same search queries, basically trying to find same set of information, where Alex is telling Corey that, look, these are the words. If you search on your site, see what you find. So when both of these, both of them are doing the same search, they would find different results. The thing about why they're getting different results, as I mentioned to you in great detail when we were doing context, intent, artificial intelligence, how the search engine is using its implied sense by using certain collected information about you as a user, and using other contexts like location, etc., 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 to sort of force a result outcome on you, as opposed to being neutral. So this is the exact concept that is displayed, and it is named as the internet bubble. And the reason for you getting different results, or Corey getting different results from what Alex is getting, is obviously explained earlier. It's just that this bubble, or the name of it, is called the internet bubble. How you would neutralize your browser is another area which sort of reduces the impact of how the search engine would implement its will by using its implied sense of injecting any sort of bias or influence on your search results, is through adjustments of privacy settings, anonymity settings, security settings, global reach, local search, overcome language. See, all these these different itemized wordings that we have used is just giving you an indication that when you get to where the browser adjustments are, you would be able to change the language in which you want your results, the location from which you want so you're neutralizing the browser somewhat in giving you results from a place or a location other than where you are browsing from. So the IP part is overwritten, and a part where you would force it to accept a location or localized search outside of your boundary of IP or ISP can be accomplished. Anonymity, you can do that adjustment in the browser, incognito mode in Google Chrome, you can do that. Privacy settings, different sorts, history, data, location, you want to neutralize that, so on and so forth. So this is a quick overview of how you would use the web adjustments to neutralize this factor of internet bubble that can be broken, and therefore best to know how to do a little bit of adjustments on your web browser. I usually open up an account which is separate from my personal settings, where I do my browsing generally for personal reasons, versus the one that I use for my research purposes. So I sort of make these different accounts to do my searches, where I have more influence on neutralizing certain aspects of my browser, using a separate account versus my personal account, which intentionally I have to leave intact, because I certainly would want to get a better user experience with more personalized settings, that versus the other account. Okay, so that's a good idea to do your search. Let's see, not even so. Internet challenges. We'll finish up internet challenges quickly tomorrow, find what is primary, secondary information. And then I want to get to this part, which is going to be the bulk of what we need to cover. This is going to be the data types, qualitative, quantitative, the type of data search that you do, the kind of analytics for quantitative and qualitative information. I'll keep using the word qualitative, quantitative data. So this is what's going to be the regular beat for me when I'm going to cover this area. We're going to look at some of the sampling techniques as well, like how would you collect the sample, and then what type of sampling is distinguished, differentiated, probabilistic, non-probabilistic sampling, and so on. If you'd like, you can read about it. We have no class tomorrow. What is it today? It's like, okay, so Wednesday. So I'll see you on Thursday for this. And in the meantime, if you find time, that you have a little bit of extra time to go through this part, you would find that this is under the heading of data types or data. Let me see what's the heading. Anyway, you'll discover it in the book. Qualitative, quantitative, continuous, whatever. And then the other portion would be the sampling techniques. So this is what we'll be looking at and covering on Thursday. And then Friday, I'm going to start with the internet law. And on Friday also, we will settle the day and time for our one session that I want to add to it. And that's going to cover the second part of internet law, which I'm guessing could be anytime between Monday and Wednesday next week. So let's just meet on Thursday. In the meantime, take care. And thank you very much for attending. I'll see you Thursday. Thanks.
Thank you. Goodbye. Good night.
Thank you. Goodbye. Good evening. Good night to everyone.